Tell the truth. Do you want a safe life? Do you want a life free from risk? Now I'm talking about risk with consequences. Risk with financial consequences. It doesn't have to be earth-shattering, but risk with consequences. Risk with the risk of physical consequences, physical harm. Do you want that, or do you want to just go through life safely without that risk? I don't think there's any right and any wrong. If your country was under threat, an existential crisis, would you leave for another country, or would you stay and try to put it right? Now I think this is quite relevant at the moment, because a lot of people are following the path here and in the US where they're saying, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. Do you stay or do you go? Should I stay or should I go now? And I think a lot of first world countries are in this position now because the infrastructure is creaking and groaning under the stress of underfinancing and overpopulation. And it's getting to a lot of people, they don't see a future. So the first thing is, I'm going, I'm getting out. And that's fine if you want to take your family away from harm, away from what you see as a lack of their future, that's absolutely fine. But are you taking them away, or are you just staying a couple of steps in front of the inevitable? Are we living in a risk-averse world? I mean, where is all the stoicism? Where are all the Stoics? What happened to all the Marcus Aurelius? How many people still identify with Zeno of Citium? Where is all the Stoicism? Even living a slow and simple and peaceful life doesn't exclude you from the desire to take risks. If it's in your DNA, I used to love motorbikes all my life. My parents hated them, absolutely loathed them, because they were horrible, dangerous things, but I got one. But eventually I was persuaded and I took it off the road and onto the track where it was safer, and there was less risk of me coming into contact with a lamppost or another motorist. But I did carry on biking, and I carried on into my late 40s when one final off with my son on the back made me decide to leave that alone. But it was a great love, and the thing is, it was kind of, yes, I just liked the idea and the freedom of it. And it was economically viable at the time. But I think I also loved the risk, and that's what drove me to go onto the track. You were always on the edge, because the only way you can compete on the track is to push it harder than the next man, to push the risk factor harder than the next man. But I eventually left that alone. I'm one of those who believes that eating a certain amount of dirt in your formative years, in your youth, in your childhood, builds up your immune system. Wasn't there a film in the 70s, John Travolta, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble? I didn't want to be that boy in that plastic bubble. I wanted to be that boy with his face down in a puddle, cramming dirt sandwiches into my face. And I'm still here, and I'm relatively healthy for an old croc. For many, many years I spent my spare time, all my spare time, wild camping and climbing in the Lake District, and I never actually told many people where I was going. I used to just disappear. Even when I was married, I think my wife only had a rough idea of where I'd be and for how long. And I finally thought about this, and I thought about how selfish it was when a girl I work with said to me, will you please just leave me a note to say where you're going, what and when roughly you can be back, and contact details. Then we know if you don't come back, we know where to start looking. And I thought about it, and I thought, my love of just taking that bit of a risk. I mean, going up in the lake, it's only a small risk, but people die. And I was climbing as well. People die doing that. And it was only then that I thought, yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking risk, but obviously you have to consider the people around you. Funny, she was a woman, still is. So are you today, actually. We're going to see her later on. And isn't it funny how women seem to manage to get their heads screwed on without crossing the threads? I think a certain amount of risk is a good thing. It teaches us about consequences in life. It builds winners and losers. Every entrepreneur is a risk taker. And I don't think people really appreciate the entrepreneurs in life as much as they should. Because unlike most of us, they will take it on the chin. If they invest thousands in a project that fails, they will take it on the chin and try again. It's something in the DNA, the risk takers in life. The risk takers in life produce the winners and the losers. Those who just bimble along in safety are missing out a little bit, I think, on the fun in life. I may be wrong. I mean, there'll be people out there saying, no, you're wrong, you know, you should look after yourself because your family need you. But if it's in your DNA, you look at people like Ranulph Fiennes and people like that, and Robert Falcon Scott, family men who went out and sometimes died for risk. Because they had to, because it was in the DNA to go and find something out, discover something, push the limits of endurance. I envy people like that. They're like the boys' own heroes that I think we all need. Even if we're not taking the risk, we can actually live vicariously through them. So even in a peaceful, slow life like mine, you can still have that buzz. You don't have to. Slow and peaceful doesn't necessarily mean absolutely safe, risk averse. We all need that buzz. We all need that little bit of adrenaline rushing through our veins. Even me. More so when I was a kid. Come on, Molly. We seem to be moving towards a society where risk is considered a bad thing to be avoided at all costs. Even young children are told you must avoid skinning your knees or blacking your eyes at all costs. What does this do? Does this produce adults who run away from adversity? I don't know, it's just something to think about on this cold but very pleasant and very still, quite damp. The ground is wet. The sun is coming up behind me in the east and I can see the light in the sky, and it augurs well for a fairly pleasant day. I don't know what we'll be doing today because Molly has got a little poorly tummy again. She gets like this. There's nothing actually wrong with her. She just has days now, at least one day a week, where she won't eat anything and her little tummy's rumbling away like mad, and all she wants to do is lie in a basket, and it worries me like mad. But she's got up this morning. She had one of those days yesterday, but she's got up and she's trotting about now. So all is good with the world, and I hope all is good with your world. Do you take risks? Do you not take risks? Should you take risks? Shouldn't you take risks? Is it right or is it wrong? It's just something to think about until we see you on the flip. Peace and love.